Hello again, and welcome to Adventures in Book Hunting, Episode 4. It's a fact. Wanted to make a hopefully quick video about a sizable haul that I made at a local thrift store just yesterday. Um, just to give you guys a little ongoing background about how I came to do all of this. I've been book hunting for about 10 years, and 10 years ago, I was mostly hunting for myself, sometimes for friends, family members. Uh, now, very little for myself. Still hunting for family and friends. Most of what I do is geared towards helping get interesting things to sell for a local bookshop, the Hatter Bookshop in Princeton, West Virginia. And both with the bookshop and with family and friends, I get requests for things to be on the lookout for. Sometimes specific items, sometimes specific sorts of books. Um, uh, and recently, it seems like I've had some pretty good luck finding specific items that are on people's wish lists. Not so much for this haul. Uh, this haul is almost entirely, let me look around real quick. Yeah, almost entirely science fiction and fantasy. I just wanted to share these with you before getting most of these delivered to the Hatter Bookshop. And if you're interested in anything you see here, the Hatter Bookshop is a great place to look for books of any sort. But as I said, most of this is going to be science fiction and fantasy. First off, uh, there was multitude of fantasy books and fantasy books geared towards uh, Dungeons and Dragons related fiction set in the Forgotten Realms, which, if you're not a Dungeons and Dragons player, Forgotten Realms is the default setting for the modern iteration 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And on these two standalone books, I believe, as you can see, Dungeons and Dragons endorsed product. And in fact, one has the D&D logo on it, and one has Wizards of the Coast. In any event, hopefully these will be well received. I also found several parts of series, and so my thought is I will probably hold on to these, at least temporarily. Um, when I went to the thrift shop yesterday, I didn't have a whole lot of time to look. So I'm hoping that on a return trip, I can find some other parts of these series and hopefully complete them. Um, for instance, this is a series, once again, set in the Forgotten Realms setting of Dungeons and Dragons, a series called The Fighters. And these are the first three books. Let's see if I can show all these. The first three books in a 4-book series. I say it's nothing I'm terribly familiar with, but having played Dungeons and Dragons for goodness by this time almost 40 years, uh, especially with the resurgence of Dungeons and Dragons in our culture, these might be wanted by somebody out there in the world. But as I said, I think I will hang on to these at least for a little while and see if I can find the missing book. And in that regard, we have another set of books, also set in the Forgotten Realms. And it looks like the series is called War of the Spider Queen. With that, Dro prominently on the cover. And of course, a blurb on the back by R.A. Salvatore, probably writer of the most famous characters set in the Forgotten Realms. Oh, and I did say Dro, and that's how you can tell I'm old. If you start out playing Dungeons and Dragons in first edition, perhaps as late as second edition, you call the elves of the Underdark Dro. I hear these days the children call them Drow. Anyway, just a way you can tell someone's age. And once again, I think I'm going to hold on to this for a little while. This is at least a 5-book series, and I believe I'm missing number 4. So I'm going to hopefully get back to that thrift shop and try and find the missing book. And moving on, I found a couple of fantasy series not related to Dungeons and Dragons, but just, let's say fantasy books. This is a series called The Legend of Sigmar by Graham McNeil. And I am not at all familiar with this writer or this series, but it does look like it's set perhaps in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. In any event, a book cover does not make a book, but that art really caught my attention. Barbarian with Warhammer. Epic stuff. Anyway, once again, I think I'll hold on to this and try my luck at finding the third book in the trilogy. This is just books 1 and 2. Also found these hardcover books. The Godslayer Chronicle by James Clemens. And here we have, I believe, book 1 of the series. Once again, really nice art. Look at that demonic figure on the front. And book 2, The Hinterland. Like I say, I'm not familiar at all with this author or this series, but, once again, it's blurbed by the right people on the back. Aria Salvatore and John Saul give it high regard. So, anyway, once again, I only have the first 2 books. Before I try and donate these to the Hatter, I'm going to try and find that third book. And now we're on to the stuff that I believe I'll probably take immediately. And from here, from fantasy, we're going into some hard sci-fi science fiction. Found this. I am familiar with this author, David Weber, and the book Out of the Dark. And it looks like a classic sort of alien invasion story. It appears to be a standalone novel. I have read some of David Weber's Honor Harrington series. Fairly decent writer. So, like I say, once again, that'll be going to the Hatter. Okay. And we have Leviathan Awakes. Leviathan Awakes by James S.A. Corey, which of course is the source material, as it says on the cover, for the television series The Expanse. Very popular show, very popular series. And this, of course, is the first novel in the Expanse series. So hopefully it can find good use at the Hatter. Thought about keeping this to read first, but I've got a lot on my TBR. Don't know how long it'll take me to get to it, so I think it would be better served just to get to the bookshop. And from there, that's like just, like I say, general fantasy, science fiction contributions. Now we get to what I call the cool part of the haul, at least in my regard. And I found a couple of Star Wars themed source books. And for instance, this one, Book of the Sith. I want to show you a little bit of the interior of this. The conceit, I suppose, of this book is that this is a book about the Sith compiled from Sith sources by Luke. And of course, that's Luke Skywalker. And throughout the text, you have notes purportedly made by Luke about these materials where the Sith document their own history and philosophy. And as these are supposed to be from different sources, you'll see that the book in different sections has different bindings. It's hard to tell there, but you can tell a little bit. The different sections are styled differently. because they're supposed to represent different eras of Sith Lords, across time. So you have this section with this lining. You move a little farther into the book, and you have a completely different border and some very interesting illustrations. And in this section, there's another photograph from the interior, but once again, you can see an entirely different page set from the rest of the book. Very interesting. Star Wars remains very popular. I think this will certainly find a good home at the Hatter. And this other book is the Bounty Hunter Code Book, with notes, the conceit being that this is a work compiled by the Alliance forces. And in this one, the bounty hunter Boba Fett has made notes throughout, giving his commentary. Oh yes, and apparently others as well. Here's a neat little note where they're talking about the rules of bounty hunting, and if you can see, here's a little note from Greedo where he says, "All the rules," exclamation mark. But yeah, and look at this. Very beautifully done book. Look at those deckled edges. Like I say, once again, very interesting looking book. Once again, it's Star Wars, and Star Wars remains very popular. And then for something completely different, I found this. This is the Fantasy Artists Figure Drawing Bible. And this is a book giving you instruction in how to draw fantasy illustrations. And throughout, there are these beautiful illustrations. And, and just lessons on technique, on drawing in this sort of genre. As you can see, it's spiral bound. Yes, like section on how to draw and illustrate elves. Just a beautiful book. And I know this is something that the bookshop's not going to have, but also something very unique. I don't expect it to last long there. In any event, it's the last one. Just to recap, all of this came from a local thrift shop. I spent right at $2 for everything I just showed you. It's a thrift shop that I've been going to for many, many years. And over those years, I've built a rapport with the staff and manager of the store. And so they were kind enough to give me heads up about when sizable new donations come in, uh, when they're going to be putting new stuff out. And because we have this rapport, I get probably better than average deals than most people. And if you're going to be a book hunter, whether for yourself or for others, it's always good to build those relationships. In any event, there's way too many books to do a book pyramid for this one. So I think I will just wrap this up and wish you all good luck in book hunting. Thank you.